Well, it looks like we're joined here with Mr. Stephen Smith. Mr. Smith, are you able to hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, thank you for joining us. I appreciate it. Mr. Smith, I'm here. I'm Brian Cartwright, and we are broadcasting from the Ford Marietta dealership here in Marietta, Georgia. We broadcast from the local facilities. But Mr. Smith, Mr. Smith, would you mind just identifying yourself, who you are, what you do, and what the Amazon Fleet uh, program is? It's an awesome program that's designed to make sure that the DSPs do not drop routes and get their safety portion of their FICO score. Can you tell the audience out here how you're helping keeping these fleets up and running?
Yeah, of course. Again, my name is Stephen Smith. I'm the regional fleet manager for the Southeast region over the DAT node here in Atlanta. I am primarily responsible for assisting and supporting the DSPs, ensuring that their fleet stays, that they have the most capacity and usage out of their fleet from a maintenance perspective. We want to ensure that DSPs are communicated with when it comes to any recalls, any overdue PMs, and things of that nature. And if they run into any issues with some of our OEM partners with vehicles that are being that are down for long periods of time, we can assist with expediting parts. So we partner, or I will partner with our vendors or our OEM partners to get parts expedited. Also work with insurance claims and things of that nature as well. So again, just here to support the DSPs from a fleet maintenance perspective and ensuring that they have their vehicles on the road and not, and to kind of like mitigate that downtime by helping in other areas where I can assist with, getting those vehicles up and operational.
Well, thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith, could you describe to us what the on-the-road team is? It appears as if Amazon has people in the DSP stations that are focused on the vans. Could you maybe describe what the on-the-road team is, what an on-the-road team member does, and how the DSP can avail themselves of the services of the on-the-road team?
Yeah, a couple of things. The on-the-road team, they kind of monitor the metrics from an Amazon perspective at the actual station. They are the guys on ground that they can partner with on a daily basis when it comes to the routes. Also, when it comes to different other metrics that we do track for the DSPs, the on-the-road team is primarily their first point of contact. They want to utilize if they run into any trouble with their vans. Also reporting to the on-the-road team the fleet health of their vehicles. For instance, they make sure that we're tracking vehicles that are on the ground, that are on route, that are unsafe. We're grounding those vehicles, identifying those vehicles to ensure that the DSPs are getting those vehicles fixed. Also, just making sure that PMs are being completed on time, damages are being completed on time, vehicles are being utilized and not just sitting idle. So those are a couple of things that the OTR team does and that we're responsible doing at the station level.
Well, that's awesome, because when we were running operations, obviously you lived and breathed on not dropping routes. Mr. Smith, would you say that you've been of assistance? We know you have, but this is the question I've got to ask. That your program, our mission is zero drop routes from the safety standpoint and getting that 97% FICO, the safety portion of it. How would you say to the, I've got two more questions. How would you say to the existing DSP 2.0 that's struggling to get that high FICO score and not drop a route, how is the on-the-road team and your fleet service assisting them in achieving those objectives?
Again, it's just partnering and communicating the vehicles that are especially that are down for maintenance. Assisting guys with expediting parts, also providing different dealerships and service providers that they utilize, giving them that information that they need and the resources that they need to ensure that their fleet is up and operational. Again, on a daily basis, we talk the different metrics regarding our fleet health and our fleet safety, and that goes every day. So those are some of the things that we're doing currently right now to assist. Always open for new ideas of how we can support even more from the DSPs. But again, just make sure that we are transparent with the information, that the DSPs are aware, and we're removing any barriers that they may have in the event they are seeing issues with their fleet from a capacity standpoint.
Well, thank you, Mr. Smith. One more question. We talked about not dropping routes. If it were possible for a backup van to be available on demand, so if something's wrong, the van has to be pulled, sidelined. It could be body work, it could be a warranty recall, it could be mechanical, it could be anything. But what would that mean, do you think, to the typical DSP and to Amazon to have an uninterrupted source of vans so that the DSP does not drop a route?
Well, that'll be great if we had that in our financial model currently. If we did provide something like that, that would be awesome. If you guys are providing that service, I would say that's awesome, because as of right now, we don't provide buffers for vehicles that are in shop. There are some use cases where we will allow supplemental rentals. But that's more or less on the lines of, a supply and demand in the event a vehicle goes down for warranty work or volume increases at a station and they cannot disseminate the extra volume and flex or to different DSPs. So in those instances, the DSPs would definitely probably be able to utilize a buffer in that case, in the event they don't have the vans to do that. But again, just that communication with the OTR team.
Go ahead and pull it in.
They are available to kind of like change up the amount of routes that they have if they don't have those vehicles are really available. But again, at the end of the day, we don't want to drop routes. So again, so they have their vehicles up and operational, and their overall readiness rate is at that 98, 99%. That's what we're looking at, and that's what we're trying to mitigate for us, any risk of that not meeting those thresholds. But again, if you guys are providing that service, that is awesome. I would definitely like to see that within the DAT node for some of the stations that we're having issues with.
Well, thank you. Cindy, there's someone named Jim. You need to mute them because Mr. Smith is trying to talk and they're joining the conference. Open mic. Well, yeah, thank you, Mr. Smith. One more last question, because we're talking right now to a gentleman who is starting in a new 2.0 class in August. They're brand new. They are coming from an automotive background, which in many cases is not the case, but they've had no experience in managing or dealing with fleets. They're getting their first, I think, 5 or 10 vans in the next couple of weeks, and then trying to expand to become an effective DSP. Mr. Smith, what advice would you give to the new class of DSPs that are going to be joining us here in the next few weeks? And what should they know about you, your on the road team? What are some of the different precautions that they should take? What should they know about keeping their vans up and running?
Well, it all depends. For the most part, we definitely want to ensure that we are exercising the DVCR process, which is the daily vehicle readiness process checks that we have to do on a daily basis. That's going to be the first line of defense when we define those issues that the drivers are seeing every day. We have to rely on that data from the drivers because they're the users. And they're utilizing the van. So that is number one. So you definitely want to make sure that your DVCR percentages are within the network standard, which is 98%. Number two, you want to also track and make sure that your odometers are reading correctly. A lot of times we're seeing that vehicles are being um, delivered and the odometer readings are not correct. So those are one of the things that you want to do to make sure that they are reconciled and they align with what is in the Elements database or what's on Accelerate. So you want to do that too as well. That is very important when it comes to your PMs. So your PMs are, as everyone already know, your maintenance intervals are based off your odometer knowledge. So you don't want to go overdue on a PM and because the odometers are wrong. So that's one of the first things you want to check. Secondly, again, just routine maintenance, and again, talking about PMs, just wanted to ensure that your routine maintenance is done, is up to speed, and then your damages, which is inevitable, it's going to happen. We're going to have those damages. So whenever you do have those damages, make sure that we are not waiting around to get them addressed. We want to get those addressed, get the insurance claims in, and get those vehicles to the appropriate facilities to start the work. Because again, then that turns into a capacity issue, and then like I stated before, we don't provide buffers for damaged vehicles that are being worked on. So within this COVID pandemic that we're having now, I know some of our OEM partners are having issues with the supply chain of parts. So again, you want to hurry up and make sure that you kind of like mitigate that risk by addressing the issues and getting them into the shops as soon as possible. So in any event they need to order parts for that vehicle, then that has to happen. So again, just having that overall eyesight over your fleet is very important. I understand that sometimes we get caught up in the operational portion of it, and we seem to not look at the logistical portion. But when you don't have the vehicles you need to do your job, then that really hurts you. So again, just overall, just have that maintain that daily oversight over your fleet.
Well, that is a gold mine of advice, Mr. Smith. And well, one more thing, since you brought it up, I remember it was almost exactly to this day in 2018 that the 2.0 contract came out. We were working with 1.0s, and we read it, and we saw it said a scratch the size of $1 needed to be fixed within like 3 days. It was like, oh, really? That's so hard to do. But taillights, rear view mirrors, bump scratches, what is the threshold that a DSP should consider, seriously getting some, let's just minor body work done if it could be done, for example, on site, but untimely scratches, cosmetics? Or one last thing, we do note that because there's sensors and cameras in the bumpers and in the mirrors now, these are very smart vans, that there could be some drivability or safety issues from what seem like minor body issues. How does a 2.0 owner or manager know when they should actually take care of a body work issue, something non-mechanical? Mr. Smith, I think you're still muted.
Sorry about that. Again, I was on mute. But what the new DSPs will receive, they will receive a welcome email with all of the information regarding the SLAs for damages, things of that nature, of when a damage needs to be repaired. Bottom line, safety is number one. Anything safety has a relatively low threshold as far as the repair time. We need to go ahead and ground that vehicle and make sure that if it's a safety damage, that is repaired as soon as possible. But within the roadworthy guidelines, we have those SLAs, and that will be shared with the DSPs once they receive their welcome emails, and they'll be able to gauge based off of what the instructions are within those guidelines to be able to know when to take in a vehicle or not.
Well, thank you. SLA, service level agreement, and so I'm assuming the on-the-road team in your actual station is there to assist all DSPs with compliance issues and describing the nature of the damage as to determine if it's a safety versus a cosmetic kind
Yes.
of issue, right?
Right.
Right. Well, Mr. Smith, I appreciate you joining us. Again, I'm here in Atlanta. I'd certainly like to follow back up with you. Again, we're here at the Ford Marietta operation, but we also have the Mercedes operation as well. And we're servicing all vans here, rental vans, merchants fleet vans, you name it, we service it on site, pickup, Beide Mechanical, 7 days a week, including Sundays, which is why we call this Safety Sunday. So are there any last remarks, Mr. Smith, that you'd like to leave the DSP community with? We really appreciate your attendance and look forward to future attendance in this event. Any last words for the DSP community?
Yeah, just one last thing. I think it's a great service that you guys are providing, especially with the recalls that we have, and we have one of the biggest fleets within the Southeast region. Definitely utilize the services. Utilize the services you got that are willing to provide, and I look forward to working with you guys in the future.
Well, thank you, Mr. Smith. I appreciate it. Look forward to working with you too. And again, the multi-point inspection we talked about earlier is free. You can't beat free, right? And that's it. And one last thing before we go today, we just want to remind you that we're doing on-site biosecurity safety services, right? We're doing, we call it COVID busters. We're offering sanitization of the vans as well as detailing. We just did 15 yesterday, but we'll do them on site in all 3 stations, and we will come and make sure the vans are maintained on a regular basis or on an as-needed basis. Any van that comes into the shop like this one gets sanitized automatically. But it is important with this COVID virus because it can stay in the air or on surfaces, and everybody lives in these vans 8 to 10 hours a day, or maybe at least 7 to whatever hours, that we make sure that everybody is safe and we have a very cost-effective and efficient way of maintaining the inner cabin health of the van, as well as certainly making sure that the van complies with the Beide guidelines that Mr. Smith just talked about, dents, dings, taillights, rear view mirrors, things like that, but also just making sure that they're looking good. So again, I want to thank Mr. Stephen Smith for joining us today. I'd also thank Mr. Gary Baxter for joining us today here, the service advisor from the Ford Marietta here in Marietta, Georgia. And I would like to tell everyone, be safe. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Smith.